can I start, or what do we have to do? You just, for
Yeah,
people
go
that
ahead.
see Madison, can they see
No,
me?
they can see you.
Yes,
So
go ahead.
I'm Tom Friedland. I'm the president of the Berkeley City Club. I want to welcome you all to this evening's program. I think many of you are not City Club members. The City Club is one of the better restaurants in the Berkeley locale. And we have a hotel that has been on sheltering in place orders for the past month, but is kind of reopening in January for more service. So if you have out-of-town guests who are coming to Berkeley, please consider having them stay at the Berkeley City Club. And with the vaccines coming, I think we can start turning our heads to recruiting members back who may want to get in touch with the City Club and fill out an application that we will activate when we are ready to open and welcome you. So please consider doing that. And with that, I'm going to turn the program over to my wife, Sandy, who is in charge of the program this evening.
Hi, Madison, if you can hear me, I'm seeing not speaker view, but the Berkeley City, one of the Berkeley City Club icons on the full screen, which I can't seem to get rid of. So I don't know if you can fix that from where you are.
I'm not sure if I can fix it. Are you able to, is it on speaker view or gallery view?
I'm on speaker view and it's not working. You're in the middle for some reason.
Okay.
And I haven't pinned you. So
you haven't pinned me? Okay, you could try pinning yourself and see if that removes me.
all right, that did. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. It's been such an amazing day that I hope that we can kind of relax and escape a little bit into a completely different world of Frida Kahlo. It may be just what we all need this terrible day. And so I hope that you can turn off the news that's been running in your head and enjoy this evening with us. It's a very special pleasure for me to introduce tonight's speaker, my friend and docent extraordinaire, Karen Libby. I know both how much art means to her and how she can elevate the act of looking at a work of art into experiencing its essence. She can transform a painting or a piece of sculpture from an object into something far more meaningful and sometimes even thrilling. I also know how hard Karen worked to complete the rigorous 2-year training course required to become a docent. It's something that she had dreamt about ever since childhood, when she and her mother were regular museum goers. Before Karen retired and finally could pursue that lifelong dream, she was a design consultant specializing in doctors' offices, pharmacies, and medical laboratories and hospitals, about as far away as you could get from a museum. She came to that career after having been a medical surgical nurse at Alta Bates Medical Center and later a nurse and office manager for doctors' practices. She eventually worked in Kaiser as a project manager in the facility planning and design department. As you may have guessed from this professional evolution, Karen enjoys seeking challenges. She told me that she always has to be learning new things. The De Young Museum and the Legion of Honor satisfy that need. Being a docent, she said, is like being permanently enrolled in a continuing education program. Each new exhibit is a new course. Since our programs went online, I think it was March, maybe April, some of our scheduled speakers have either canceled their appearances or expressed reservations about whether this format could be effective. Karen, however, not only is comfortable leading virtual art tours, but also has embraced the advantages this medium offers. She told me that many people are actually more comfortable interacting with her this way. And it's especially true for people with disabilities who can be more engaged when a work of art is actually in their face. In the 9 years that Karen has been a docent, she prides herself in tailoring her tours to her audiences, especially people with low or no vision or other physical or mental limitations. Before the pandemic, She led so-called artful discovery tours on Mondays when the museum is closed but is open to people with disabilities. Since the COVID restrictions have closed the museums, Karen has continued to conduct these tours, sometimes for a much wider audience. So tonight, we're incredibly fortunate to have Karen to ourselves to guide us through some of the highlights of the Frida Kahlo exhibit, Looks Can Be Deceiving. She'll help us to see the beyond the oh so familiar appearance of this iconic Mexican artist. So Karen, without further ado, turn your camera on and we're all eyes and ears.
All right, I'm going to start my screen sharing. And here we go. Can everyone see the first slide? I hope so. Okay.
Yes, we can. Yes.
I can't hear. So, all right. So thank you for joining me tonight. I hope that we can all get away from what's going on in the world and take a little breather and enjoy being transported back in time so that I can introduce you to a rather incredible artist and woman in her own right. Frida Kahlo, Mexican artist. The Frida Kahlo exhibit at the De Young Museum, Appearances Can Be Deceiving, will hopefully open someday. And when the museum opens, we hope that we will have the Frida Kahlo exhibit for you to see. But in the meantime, I'm delighted to be able to introduce you to Frida. And I will start by showing you this image. And while I'm talking to you about this image, I want to go through and just go through a timeline of Frida's life, because I cannot cover everything that happened to this woman in a presentation, but I think having the background knowledge about her helps to explain her art. So Frida was born in 1907 to Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo and Calderon and Matilde Calderon y Gonzalez and Guillermo Kahlo in Coyoacan, Mexico. In 1910, to show her strong support for the Mexican Revolution, Frida later claims that this was the year of her birth. In 1914, at the age of 6, she contracts polio. She has a deformed foot. Her father encourages her to do sports, boxing, running track, in order for her to not be inhibited by the polio. In 1920, at age 13, she attends the National Preparatory School in Mexico City, one of the most prestigious schools in the city, with the goal of studying medicine at the university. In 1924, at 17, she begins dating a fellow student, Alejandro Gomez Arias, who is the love of her life, who she just adored. In August, at the age of 18 in 1925, she and Alejandro were in a severe bus accident, which leaves Frida with multiple injuries. In 1926, at 19, doctors discover 3 vertebrae out of place, and to keep her immobilized, Frida's torso is encased in corsets. At 1927, at the age of 20, she joins the Communist League. Alejandro moves to Berlin, and Frida sends him numerous love letters. She just cannot let him go. She's so adoring of him. But in 1928, she meets Diego Rivera at the age of 24. At 26, she must terminate her first pregnancy due to medical complications. In 1932, at age 25, Diego and Frida moved to Detroit, Michigan, where Frida suffers a miscarriage and spends 13 days in the Henry Ford Hospital. At age 26, Diego receives a Rockefeller Center commission to paint a mural, and the couple moved to New York City. In 1927, Frida is hospitalized again, this time for foot surgery, and several toes are removed, and her third pregnancy is terminated. In 1936, at the age of 29, Frida and Diego helped to arrange asylum for the Russian communist Leon Trotsky and his wife Natalia, and the couple raised money for the Republicans' fight against Franco's forces. In 1937, at age 30, Leon Trotsky and his wife Natalia moved to the Blue House, where Frida and Diego take precautions to protect the political guests. In 1938, at age 31, the surrealist poet and essayist André Boutin and his wife Jacqueline Lamba stay with the Riveras. Although Frida finds André pretentious, he becomes one of her strongest admirers. And at this point in her life, Edward G. Robinson buys 4 self-portraits. At the age of 32, Frida and the American photographer Nicholas Murray become lovers, and we'll talk about Frida's life and her relationship with Diego and others. In 1934, Frida's father dies. This is a very traumatic experience for her. She's very close to her father. 1942, her works are included in the exhibit 20th Century Portraits at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. At the age 36, she joins the faculty of the Education Ministry School of Painting and Sculpture in Mexico City. In 1939, the Ministry of Education awards Frida the National Prize of Arts and Sciences. In June, Frida undergoes a bone graft operation. She begins hallucinations in reaction to the large dosage of morphine she is taking for pain. In 1948, she reapplies to the Communist Party. In 49, her right foot becomes gangrenous and is amputated. In 1951, at age 49, she is now confined to a wheelchair and has nurses taking care of her, and she's taking large doses of painkillers. In 1953, at the age of 34, Frida's right leg is amputated below the knee. In 1954, days before her death, Frida attends a protest against the CIA intervention in Guatemala. And I can't help but thinking, after all of what we've gone through today, how Frida would respond to what's going on for us. So now that you have a background on Frida, generally, let me really introduce you to her. And Frida is the woman in this image. She is photographed by her friend and lover, Nicholas Murray. She's in the Casa Azul. She's standing in the courtyard. And this particular photograph I have chosen because it really tells us everything about Frida. We see her standing facing forward, 3/4 view, chest up. She's not looking at us, but she is absolutely adorned to perfection. Her hair is done up in the Tijuana style. It's braided, and her braids are brought up onto the top of her head, and she's placed a bouquet of bougainvilleas. She has incorporated a red cloth in her braids. We look down at her face. She has the most clearest complexion. Her eyebrows are her traditional Frida Kahlo eyebrows that met in the middle. She never plucked her eyebrows. She continued to keep them as they were. She looks down. Her nose is long and perfect. We see just above her beautiful red lips like signs of a mustache. She never ever did anything to remove that. It's also been said that she said at one point, you know, from my nose up, I'm a woman, but from my nose down, I'm a man. She's dressed in a huipil, which is a traditional Tijuana style blouse, which I will talk about later. In her left hand, which she is holding up at her face level, she holds an Olympic sculpture, which is indicative of her love of Mexican heritage and Mexican art. And as a matter of fact, she and Diego had enough artifacts that they had collected over the years to start a museum in Mexico City. We see around her wrist bracelets that are indicative of the silver work that was done in Mexico City. She loved wearing jewelry, and we'll see a lot of that. Then I ask you to look up at the upper right corner at the flower pot on the wall. This is Frida. This is Frida's artwork. This is how she portrays herself. We see this flower pot with broken shards and a doll's body, the back of the body with no arms and no legs, as you can see here, a head detached from the body, and a flower. I can't help but think that this is Frida's depiction of herself, and we'll see why later. But she also has taken the mortar of the flower pot and painted it the same color, dyed it the same color as the wall. This is the extent of how Frida Kahlo took her artwork. Oh my goodness me. Oh. So let me introduce you to Frida. In the center photograph, we see Frida at her first communion in her communion outfit. To the photograph on the right is her father, Guillermo, from Germany, non-religious, but a great artist, a photographer. She adored him. She worked with him in the dark room. The two of them went out on photographic expeditions together. He was employed by the city of Mexico to do architectural photography. So she learned from a very early age an art perspective in life. The photograph on the left is her mother and father on their wedding day. Her mother was extremely religious in the Catholic religion, and Frida was raised in this religion. The interesting thing about this particular portrait of her communion is that later on in life, on the back of this portrait, she wrote idiot, meaning she didn't really believe in religion anymore. So what we see in this image today is the Frida Kahlo Museum as it is in Mexico City. It's where our story begins. It's where our story ends. We see the museum dressed as Frida Kahlo. We have skirts at the base of the windows and her headdress and flowers at the top and banners of fabric separating each window. So Frida was actually born here. Oh, come on. I'm sorry. We have a little technical difficulty here, but we'll hopefully figure out how to deal with it. I can't
Do
move.
you need some assistance, Karen?
Oh, wait a minute, let me just try this. There's a little, okay. All right, so sorry, I'm showing you. In the lower corner is the Casa Azul, the house that her father built in the European tradition as it was when she lived there with her parents. So this slide here is showing you the Casa Azul and Frida Kahlo's art studio as she had it up until her death. The easel in the middle separates the studio. We see on the left-hand side a table with all of her paints and paintbrushes, her easel and her wheelchair. And I had you take note of the wheelchair and the size of the wheelchair. Frida was 5'3" and weighed less than 100, almost 100 pounds. And this wheelchair probably could have held her husband at 300 pounds. This was long before wheelchairs were ever customized for the person who needed to use them. So the other half of the room is her working table with the drawing tablet and Mexican artifacts on the table. And it's where she probably did some of her drawings and wrote her letters. The room is flooded with light. It looks out onto the garden, and in the garden are her flowers and her plants. It's where her animals lived, and it's where she and Diego kept a lot of their artifacts. Okay, so Frida was riding home from school with her lover, Alejandro, and she was on a bus in Mexico and came into a very large populated area of Mexico City. And this is probably what the day was like when the bus collided with a trolley. And Frida was thrown from the bus and sustained multiple injuries. We see here what is Frida's first artwork. She had been bedridden for a year after this accident, and this is the first piece of art that she created that starts to tell the story of what happened to her. It's done in the ex votive style, which is a Mexican style of painting. It's typically done on metal. You can see them all over the place. And they are paintings that depict marvelous heavenly interventions. So in the upper portion of the photograph, of the drawing, we see the bus colliding with the streetcar. We see people lying all over the grounds. We have somebody under the bus here. Total chaos. On the lower portion of the drawing, she has drawn her home, the Casa Azul. She's drawn herself lying maybe on the street, also on her bed. She's in her full body cast, which she had been in for a year. She's propped up on a pillow. And there's a small image of Frida right above her. And this, I believe, is Frida's altar partner, alter self, whom she created as her partner to keep her company while she convalesced. So how did Frida do her paintings in her bedroom? On the left, we see her bedroom. She had a 4-poster bed. On the top canopy of the bed, a mirror was attached so she could lie there in bed. She could put her makeup on, do her hair, get herself ready for the day, and she could use it as her portrait, so she could paint herself. On the right-hand side, we see a special easel that was devised to go over her bed. She's just had an operation here and it's in traction. But the easel is placed so that she has both hands free. There's a special light above it so she can see what she's doing. And this allowed her to create her artworks, many of which were done from her bedroom. So as I say, Frida painted many portraits of herself, but she also painted almost anything that was within reach. And we see her lying in bed, painting on one of her corsets, which she had to wear due to her severe injuries from the accident. And I want you to note how she has done up her hair. She has ribbons in her hair. Her makeup is on. She has bracelets, rings on every finger. She sits here, lies here with a hand mirror painting her corset. Everything was a canvas to Frida. So the exhibition includes several of Frida's corsets. Some of these I'm showing you here. The one in the middle is the one that she's wearing in bed. This one on the left is another corset, which she has completely covered with amoebas and flowers, and this column, which we will see in other artworks, which represents her broken spine. This corset here, I think, was probably worn during the summer months. It was much, much cooler than the plaster cast more corsets. So as I say, everything was a canvas to Frida, and her face and her nails were another canvas. And she painted herself up and she took great care. She had a full cadre of Revlon cosmetics in her own specific colors. She didn't have a wide variety of colors, but very specific colors. And she used these as her adornments. And this is how she looked when she put herself together. You can see her beautiful complexion. She looks out at us. This is a photograph taken by Nicholas Murray for the cover of Vogue magazine. But we can see how everything that she does about herself is a piece and work of art. So Frida does self-portraits, many self-portraits. And in 1944, she did the broken column on the left. We can see here Frida standing 3/4. She looks out at us. She has no expression. She has no clothes on, but a fabric, probably a sheet, blowing around her lower torso. Her center, she's painted open. Inside is the metal column, the broken metal column representing her spine. She wears a metal brace over her naked body, completely covering her body, her neck, her head are tacks, The tacks are piercing her skin and she is bleeding. The background is depicted of a broken terrain, probably representing what Frida felt her life was like at this given moment and the pain that she was in. I like to think that the little ocean in the background and the blue sky was her hope for a better day. And appearances can be deceiving here on the right-hand side. This is the image that was the title for the exhibition. And here we see Frida drawing in pastel and crayon in a very free form, showing us herself facing forward. Her face is dark. It's not easily identified. Her features are not easily identified, but her eyes are dark and solemn and looking down. Her costume, her clothing is not painted, not drawn on the front of her body. Her body is the prominent piece. We see a corset. We see the column. Her arms are at her side at repose. On her right good leg, she has painted butterflies. Butterflies are free. Her left damaged leg is narrow and not as healthy. So again, Frida is showing us the pain and anguish that she feels. So now that we've seen Frida's disabilities and what was happening in her life with her body, let me introduce you to the Tehuana style costuming that she actually designed and had made for herself to hide these deformities. It was very important to Frida to look normal, to not have a deformity, not to appear at all anyway in pain. So she chose the Tehuana style, as I say, because her mother was from Tehuana and her mother wore the traditional clothes in photographs that were taken of her and when she was younger. And if you look at the bodice in the right-hand photograph, you can see that it is a rather simple blouse. It's square. It's straight down to the hip line. It has little capped sleeves, very easy to pull over the head. No buttons, zippers, nothing. But Frida has taken Tehuana embroidery and applicated on to the basic blouse around the front and around the neckline. The skirt, as we see on the mannequin on the left, is a two-tiered Tehuana style skirt. It's gathered at the waistline, goes 3/4 down, and then it stops, and there's a pleated lace third piece. But she has also taken Tehuana embroidery and placed it around the lower section of the skirt. So this was her way of moving around and being comfortable and not having to show her disabilities. So Frida and Diego meet. Diego is painting murals in Mexico City, as we see here on the left two images. And Frida is said that she goes to where Diego is painting. He's up on the scaffolds and she yells up to him, "Hey, Diego, come down, look at my artwork." And he looks down and, who is this little person? He doesn't know who she is. And she keeps at it. And he finally comes down and he looks at her artwork and he's intrigued by it. He likes it. And the two of them become friends and they marry. This image on the right is their wedding photograph. They married at City Hall. Frida was 22. Diego was 43. This was his third marriage. He was 6 feet tall, weighed 300 pounds. She's 5'4", weighs 100 pounds. Diego was attracted to Frida's quick wit and unconventional mind, and Frida's spunk and sense of mischief appealed to Diego's boyish prankishness. Diego was seriously overweight and generally considered to be very ugly, but he was an extraordinary man full of brilliance, humor, vitality, and charm. While Diego was commissioned to paint murals in San Francisco, and when Frida packed for their stay in San Francisco in 1930, she put a lot of long skirts in her suitcases to wear while she was in the city. So here they are in San Francisco, and on the right is Frida and Diego in the very small apartment that they lived in on Montgomery Street on the outskirts of Chinatown. And I actually had the good fortune, I guess, to go and be in the apartment where they lived. It is so small. I have no idea how the two of them managed to live in it together. It was just tiny with a teeny, teeny, teeny kitchen underneath the staircase. So in our left-hand photograph, I've included this. This is a photograph from the San Francisco Chronicle. Diego and Frida are having dinner in Chinatown. They are being greeted by the owner of the restaurant, and they are accompanied by two women from the Museum of Modern Art. And I want you to bring your attention to the way the two Museum of Modern Art women are dressed and how Frida is dressed. This is the way she put herself out when she went out. So she did not try to assimilate. She just was herself at all times. So as I mentioned, she had her leg amputated because of her polio. This is a photograph of her prosthetic. It is in the exhibition. And in typical Frida fashion, she has embellished the boot. It is a custom boot. It has a wedge heel so that she can walk easily. And she's taken a Chinese silk embroidered dragon and placed it on the boot and had that sewn on. It also has a bell right at the ankle. And I wonder why she did this when she went to such great pains to not bring attention to the fact that she had a limp. And I have no idea, but that's what I wonder. So in this portrait, this is Frida and Diego. They are in San Francisco at the time that she paints this. And it is a portrait of the two of them. Diego stands solid on the left-hand side. He's huge. He's painted in his typical workman suit, the blue work shirt, the big, huge belt. He has his workman shoes on. He's carrying his artist palette. His hair is typical of how he always wore it. His jowls are painted beautifully. His expression looks out at us. He doesn't have any indication that Frida is anywhere at all in this portrait. Frida paints herself next to him. She's tiny and demure. Her feet are barely touching the floor. Her head is cocked over towards him. She's painting herself as she liked to see herself, as the artist's adoring wife. She's wearing the traditional, again, Tewana style. And she also wears a beautiful rebozo, which was a scarf that was about 27 inches wide and 36 inches long, typically worn over the head and shoulders. She has her hair done up in a ribbon. She's wearing typical Mexican jewelry. She has her hand placed on Diego's. They are not holding hands. This is somewhat indicative of their marriage. Both of them had extramarital relationships. Frida always liked to say that she didn't mind Diego's infidelities, that being married to Diego was the most marvelous thing in the world. Regardless of all of that, I think that it pained her greatly. Over Frida's head is a dove. The dove is flying and it has a banner in its mouth. And the banner reads, "I painted these portraits in the beautiful city of San Francisco, California, for our friend, Mr. Albert Bender." It was in the month of April, 1931. So the couple left San Francisco. They went to New York City. And this is how Frida portrays herself in New York City. And I get a kick out of this photograph. I think she looks ridiculous. I don't know what she thought about this headdress, but there she is, but she's totally coordinated. Her typical wheat-bill blouse with the embroidery, her jewelry, the skirt, her signature cigarette in her hand, her nails are painted completely. But she and Diego had very interesting experiences. While they were there, they witnessed the huge disparity between the wealthy and the poor. On one hand, in her short time in the city, she was surrounded by the millionaires, socializing in spacious homes, partaking of food and drink served by the hired help. On the other hand, as she told her mother, witnessing the horrible poverty here and the millions of people who have no work or food or home, who are cold and have no hope in this country of scumbag millionaires, who greedily grab everything, has profoundly shocked us. Frida and Diego even visited a homeless shelter where they saw people sleeping like dogs in a pen. The experience inspired Diego to portray the grim reality of the painting in the painting called Frozen Assets here on the right. And I'm sorry, it's not particularly clear. What Diego is depicting is in the upper portion here. He shows New York City with its skylines and its industrialization and its magnificent architecture. The center piece, portion is of the homeless shelter with all the cots lined up, completely filling the floor. The lower portion is the outer lobby of a bank building with the guard, the bank officer at his desk, and the millionaires waiting to be admitted into the vaults so that they can deposit their money. So how did Frida really feel about New York City? To quote her, she says, "I despise the scumbag millionaires, but I loved its magnificent art." Frida paints so many portraits of herself in many different ways. At this point in time, she seems to have reached some peace. Her relationship with Diego has calmed down. They've divorced, they've remarried, they are living in Mexico City. They agree that they will have a platonic relationship. They do not live together. Frida lives in the blue house, Diego lives in another house. And Frida in this portrait seems to be at a very happy, calm, and positive place in her life. And she paints herself sitting quite comfortably. The background is diffused, mottled in coloration. It blends in with her hair. She's not ribbons in her hair at all, but her face is clearly drawn, her eyebrows again meeting, her mustache, her clear complexion, her beautiful skin, the neckline, how she has created her collarbones is exquisite. The brushwork is so fine, it's almost as if it's photographic. Her white blouse juxtaposed to her skin is set off by these beautiful folds, the pleats and the pleats around her bust line, beautiful lavender blue skirt, her signature cigarette, rings on her fingers. But the main people or portraits here are of her parrots. Since Frida was not able to have children, she had a menagerie of animals. She had monkeys, she had deer, she had dogs, she had parrots, she had a pet hawk. These were her children. And she paints these parrots, and I think a very telling way of how she feels about these animals. This guy sitting on her right shoulder here, left shoulder here, he's looking out at us and he's basically saying, "Don't mess around here. I'm taking control here, and I'm protecting my Frida." The parrot on the other side is looking at Frida and sort of looking out at us and saying, "This is my gal. We're in this together." These two birds down here, they're content. They're in mama's arms. It's peace, it's calm, it's quiet. But notice how she has painted the feathers on this bird. You can see the depth, you can see the intricacy, the detail that she has gone into in her paintings, compared to the fine, no brushstrokes here to the brushstrokes there, is an indicative of her ability to really paint. So I show you this photograph of Nicholas Murray, her lover, and Frida, and sitting in the house of the Casa Azul with the painting that we just saw. And I show you this photograph because it shows you where she lived. We see Mexican artifacts, art on the wall, various different pieces of art, and Frida sitting here. She looks stern. She looks fine. But notice this chair. Notice where the arm is on the chair. It's custom designed and the arm is placed at the back of the seat of the chair. This allowed Frida to put her arm through the spindle and sit up erect, so she did not have to hold her body up herself. The back of the chair has a custom cactus cushion to help support her, which she has painted. So this is how Frida really went to the great lengths to ease her pain and continue to live her life. So in 1946, Frida has an operation on her spine in New York. She was hoping the surgery would free her from pain, but it failed. In this painting, she just expresses her depreciation towards the operation. After she went back to Mexico, she suffered both physical and emotional depression, and she was on a tremendous amount of drugs during this time. In this painting, she depicts herself as a young stag with her own head and antlers. The young stag is pierced by the arrows and bleeding. Careful examination of the ground shows broken branches, which are indicative of her broken body. And the trees are encompassing and closing in on her. She's feeling very much despair. In the background, there's the ocean. The sky is blue, but there seems to be lightning coming through. I don't know if Frida is, again, trying to say there's got to be hope, but maybe there isn't. It's a sad picture, and it's one of the last that she painted, but not the very last. But the interesting thing is the deer here is her deer, Granzio. So in this image, I'm showing you the very last portrait that she did in 1948. She paints herself in a resplendor, thank you, which is a garment that is worn during Catholic religious ceremonies. It's made of lace, it's pleated around her head, it's highly starched so it fans out like the rays of the sun from the Virgin Mary. She has tears in her eyes. She's looking down and not at us. Her mouth is solemn. She's painted a brooch that was her mother's with a peace dove on it that meant quite a lot to her. The intricate detail that she's painted, all of the elements, the eucalyptus leaves, up here the leaves, just again shows us the extraordinary ability that she has of artwork. And I show you a mannequin of a religious figure that I think Frida was definitely influenced by. So I bring you back to our original photograph so that I can just end our little presentation with some quotes that I think are very fun from Frida. And she says, "I am my own muse, the subject I know best, the subject I want to know better. Don't build a wall around your suffering, or it may devour you from the inside. Passion is the bridge that takes you to change. I tried to drown my sorrows in alcohol, but the bastards learned how to swim. I paint flowers so they will not die. I am that clumsy human always loving, 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 and never leaving." In June 1954, Frida caught pneumonia and passed away. Upon her death, her body was laid in state at the Museum of Modern Art in Mexico City. Her remains are at the Frida Kahlo Museum, the Casa Azul. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was great. That was so good. If anyone has pictures, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get, I can't see where we are, but I can see Karen and the photograph. If anyone has questions for Karen, please put them in the chat function. You can find it at the bottom of your screen. Click on chat. And we have a few that I'm going to read, but most of them are not they're just comments. Thanks for your presentation. Beautiful job, Karen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If you have a question, please type it in. We'll wait a minute and see. Karen, that was super.
Thank you.
Yeah, we especially like the timeline, which lets us put some of this into context in a different way.
I wish there was some way that I could get everything into one presentation and not have people sitting here for 3 hours.
Tell us about the Casa Azul. Was it locked for your? Some of these items in the exhibit we haven't seen before. Why is that?
Right. When Frida died, Diego moved into the casa. Upon his death, he requested that her 2 closets in her bathroom were locked and not to be opened until 15 years after his death. So what we found in those closets and bathrooms was everything of Frida's, all of her clothing, her makeup, her shoes, everything. And it was just such a telling expose of who she was. So it was quite a find, and why Diego chose to lock them all up and not have them seen for so long, nobody really knows.
Okay, we have one question here. How do you think politics impacted her art in addition to the New York painting you showed?
I don't think politics impacted her life. She was a communist. She was for the people. Politics was a very large part of her life, but I think what really dominated her art was her body and what she was living through, how Diego affected her with his infidelities. These were the things that she put into her artwork more so than her political beliefs, as far as I know.
Okay, this is another question. Thank you for your informative presentation. It helps us understand the suffering that she endured and that informed her creative work. Splendid, such suffering. I guess it's a comment, not a question. Someone wants to know if she had any formal art training.
She did not have formal art training. She did enroll in the art school, but she didn't stay with it for very long. I think Diego was a good teacher for her. So she is basically self-taught. And if you think about what it might be like to be lying in bed for a year and then to be back in bed 52 times during your lifetime, and what else can you do? It gave her ample opportunity to really hone her skills. And as I say, her father was an artist. He was a photographer. So art was probably part of her DNA.
Did she ever go to college?
No, but she taught. She taught in college.
Do we have any more questions for Karen?
See,
What?
you get a lot of praise.
Yeah, I mean, so Karen, don't turn this off at the end because there's just one comment after another thanking you for your wonderful presentation. It really was quite special and a great way to end this tumultuous day. And I think all of us, I think Frida's face is one of the most recognizable images in the world, but as the exhibit is titled, Appearances Can Be Deceiving, I think you've helped us to look behind that facade and to learn a lot more about this amazing artist. Let me just look one more time. Oh, they want to know what did she teach and what language did she speak? What languages?
She spoke Spanish and English. She taught art, but she taught art at the school. I think she taught for like about 3 months, but her body was not, she couldn't stand in the art class. She couldn't be there. So she quit teaching and she started teaching at her home where she could be comfortable in her own environment.
And what was the school where she was teaching?
Oh,
Someone asked.
God, I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's all right. It was in Mexico.
It was Mexico City, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, we got a few more questions. What languages did she speak? Do you know?
Spanish and English.
And did she also have a Hungarian background from her European father?
Hungarian or German, it's up for debate. There's different stories on that.
But there was definitely a dichotomy in her background.
Absolutely, absolutely. Her father was not religious at all. He was of a European descent. Her mother was absolutely total Mexican, total Catholic.
Okay, so great talk from a friend of ours. Love seeing all the portraits and her elegant style. How much longer did Diego live?
When did he die? I don't know. I don't have that. Good
Okay, and
question.
someone else is asking a question that I just did a little reading on. Frida liked to say that her father was Jewish. Was that true?
We don't know.
Jewish.
I don't know. Don't know for sure, but I know there was, I mean, Frida liked to do things that she chose to do. She changed her birth date so that she could have the same birth date as a political revolution.
Yeah, Wikipedia says that he was not Jewish, but that Frida liked that idea.
Yeah. Well, we can believe Wikipedia.
Yeah, who knows? All right, and someone is asking, are there any suggestions for books about her?
Oh, let's see. I don't have a list of books. I don't know of that many about them. So I can't really answer that question.
Okay, Elsa Tranter is telling us that Diego died in 1957.
Thank you, Elsa.
And someone else is asking what our next talk is about. So we have talks scheduled for the next 3 or 4 months. In February, we're going to another art form, aerial photographer. He's a photographer who does aerial photography, and it's absolutely fascinating and gorgeous. Yeah, it's similar to what you've got in the back of your head, Karen. But he both flies the plane and takes pictures at the same time. And his name is Barry Rocaik, and I think you'll all enjoy that one too. And he also has figured out how to do Zoom presentations that work quite well for his gorgeous photography. Any other questions for our friend Karen? Okay, I think we've covered it. It was just terrific. Thank you so much.
My
And we had a great turnout. You had more than 40 people, a lot of Libbies. And so if you don't turn your computer off, you'll be able to scroll through the chat, Karen, and read all the nice things that everyone's saying. And to the rest of you, good night, and thank you for joining us. These programs are the first Wednesday of every month. They're free and open to the public, and you can find links to them on the Berkeley City Club website. It takes a little doing, but if you find events and go under events, there's listings of the program that's coming. And if you have trouble with that, you can always call Madison at the City Club, and she will explain to you how to join our programs. So thank you all for tuning in, and let's hope that there's no more upheaval in Washington. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.